Welcome back to Amplified. One term the Biden administration really advanced over the summer is what they call human infrastructure, which we're continuing to talk about too. I actually love that phrase, and it's like the one branding thing that the Democrats have done well. Now, the White House defines it as building and creating to boost both the economy and the people. And there's no better example of the impact of the human impact of infrastructure proposals that are on the table than in Flint, Michigan. Here's some backstory. In 2014, to save money, the city of Flint decided to stop getting its water from Detroit, instead using untreated water from the Flint River as its primary supply. This corroded the already aging pipes and resulted in large amounts of lead and other toxic chemicals contaminating the water supply. In the aftermath of this horribly misguided and troubling decision by city leaders, at least 90 Flint residents fell ill with Legionnaires' disease, and a dozen died. That's right, 90 people sick, 12 people dead, because city officials just wanted to save a few bucks. And in a place where more than 40% of residents live below the poverty line, the decision between continuing to use the faucets to get a glass of free water versus scrapping together the money to buy clean bottled water became a tough call to those who are already struggling. After 5 years of enduring foul-smelling, discolored, and undrinkable water coming from their faucets, residents are only just now starting to recover from the whole ordeal. Flint water crisis is a high-profile infrastructure failure that should never have happened in the first place. And that's why I've invited Flint advocate Ariana Hawk and her son Sincere Smith here to Amplify to discuss the situation in Flint and the pressing need for better water infrastructure and the political will that's needed and required to invest in the health and the wealth and the well-being of all people. Thank you so much, Ariana, for being here. It's good to see you. I want to just start by asking you, your son Sincere ended up on the cover as a baby of Time magazine. As one of the most heartbreaking photos I've seen of the whole crisis and ordeal. And I just wanted to check in with you and find out, how have you both been doing in the years since all this happened?
To be honest, a lot hasn't changed for the family. We had attempted to move out of Flint and ended up coming back in Flint when we were denied benefits like health care and stuff that they had set aside for the kids in Flint. But now that we've been back here for the past 5 years, it's kind of like normal life. It's nothing's really changed since the water crisis happened. We continue to fight. We've continued to advocate for clean water. We still using bottled water. Our kids still can't safely drink the water. We can't safely cook with the water. So, things in Flint, although it's kind of like going back to normal, life isn't normal for us here because we don't have access to the clean water that we deserve.
One of the most compelling, I think, pieces to come out of this is that so many people end up, like yourself, being unwittingly thrust into a national spotlight, right? Now you're under kind of a national microscope, people looking and talking about what's happening there in your town. You ended up becoming an activist, probably not by design. And I just wonder, what has this experience been like for you to be thrust out there and now being an advocate? Had you seen yourself, imagine that you'd be in this position of kind of being on the front lines of a fight before in this way?
No, not in this way. I mean, just fighting for the kids was my only thing. But when the crisis and we started being ignored and enough stories weren't being told, enough of our stories, enough Black stories. It was more, people were caring about the issue, but they didn't really care about the issue. It was the Black people that were still being left out. We were still being, not heard. And so when the opportunity was presented, it wasn't really an opportunity. She heard me crying. She seen me crying. She seen my baby suffering. And, she wanted to help. She wanted to see what she could do to help our family. And by no means was I ever going to be an activist. This was not in my future. I didn't even know what activist work looked like. But this was something that I became passionate about because I have kids, and I think that the kids were the ones who are going to be affected by this in the long run. So it ignited the fire under me to keep fighting, and I'm still fighting.
Tell us about, where you are with it all right now. I'm just curious what kind of conversations you're having and with who, just trying to hold people accountable there and get something done.
So recently we haven't been doing anything, just trying because of the pandemic. I think more so has been us reaching out to folks to let them know, like, yo, Flint is in a crisis on top of a pandemic. Like, we need people here to help us. We need resources here. We already been in a pandemic for almost 7, going on 8 years, and to be hit, I'm sorry, we were in a crisis, but to be hit with a pandemic for these past 2 years, you got people out here still lined up to get water. They can't find, resources to get filters. They can't afford to buy filters. We're in the middle of a pandemic. People not working. It's just so many factors that people have forgotten about that with Flint, and then having a crisis and a water crisis and a pandemic on top of it. It's been hard. People have pretty much forgotten about it. So I've been making it my business to talk to people, to let people know, like, when we do have some sort of national attention or some sort of media coverage on something small, I make sure I let them know. We are 7 years into this water crisis. Our water is not fixed. Our
Wow.
houses are not fixed. We can't safely drink the water. Although they've replaced the service lines, that has the city side. That has nothing to do with what the residents live with. We still are living in these same homes with the same corroded pipes that we had in 2014 when the water crisis happened.
Wow.
A lot of us live in poverty where we
Seven
can't afford to
years.
go and tear up our houses and redo everything. We don't have it like that. Only thing we can do is to trust that the landlords and that these people who own these houses will do the right thing for the people and try to fix something. But even that's not even on them. That was the city and the state's fault of what happened to us. So it's just been kind of like, just keeping up out, just keeping telling my story and letting me and my story speak for itself.
Wow. I mean, I'm just kind of stumped that we're still 7 years in and you're talking about some real structural conditions that, I mean, it might even not just be the landlord. Certainly, the government has some, culpability in making sure, as we keep talking about infrastructure right now this week, that making sure the pipes get fixed, that making sure that the water works are happening. And, there's this package in Washington right now that ultimately will provide money to come into your state and to presumably come into your town to be able to do some of this, that there's still a lot of, political jockeying around. We don't know exactly what's going to happen with that yet. But speaking of the politics and the politicians, we've seen that multiple Michigan officials, including the former governor, are facing criminal charges over their handling of all of this. Do you think that justice was served in your case?
No, I know people personally that have been affected by this water crisis. My daughter's dad has died from this water crisis. So no, justice will never be served. Governor Snyder getting a slap on his wrist for what I guess they call it manslaughter or whatever they're giving him, 2 years of negligence. Like, that'll never be justice for us and our family. That'll never be enough for us to be like, okay, things are okay in Flint. I feel safe here. I feel like the people in these powerful positions really care about us. They don't, because if they did, we wouldn't be 8 years into a crisis begging for some justice.
Wow. Ariana, I am so grateful that you came and shared your story with us. And as I'm thinking about the timeline and all that you're saying about how, you want to make sure that this is not continuing to land on deaf ears, I am pleased that we can continue to amplify your story, and our hearts are with you all. And I'm hoping that we can get more attention to everything that's happening in Flint and make sure that people are paying attention and figure out how to hold more people accountable there. Thank you so much for being with us.